80 years ago, in this majestically beautiful area in the Canadian Rockies, one of the darkest events in Ukrainian-Canadian history took place. About 600 men of Ukrainian origin were interned at a campsite here at the base of Castle Mountain. Today, we are here to remember them.
To use the excuse.
John Grigorovich, chairman of the Ukrainian-Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
The worst thing that happened to them wasn't that they weren't guilty of any crime, because innocent people are sometimes jailed or go into concentration camps, as these people were. But the fact that the memory of that was completely forgotten, and they didn't even have the dignity of having their sufferings remembered.
Halia Lipska-Wilson, president of Cook in Calgary.
27 квітня до нас звернувся Любомир Лицюк з просьбою, щоб в Калгарах і Брентві зібрали гроші на пам'ятник і припам'ятний плакат. На таку важливу честь ви показали, що в нашій єдності наша сила. До 2 тижнів це здійснилося. Низький вам поклін. Дорогі присутні, щедра подяка вам. Також найбільша подяка вам, доктор Лицюк, пане Григорович, Борис, Бані, за вашу вічну та постійну працю в здійснення сьогоднішнього дня. Ви не дозволили, щоб пам'ять інтернованих українців залишилася даремною.
Часті на віки вічні. Амінь. Радуйся, вселенної похвало, радуйся, храме Господні, радуйся, городці.
В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Благословляється пам'ятник цей і таблицю цю окропні води цієї свяченої в ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь. Благословляється пам'ятник цей і таблицю цю окропні води цієї свяченої в ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Амінь.
Guy Fortin, from the Department of National Heritage, representing the federal government.
Thanks to the effort of the Ukrainian-Canadian Civil Liberties Association and the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress, we are commemorating an important part of our history. It is a day to reflect on the past and look towards the future. Thank you.
Dr. Любомир Лицюк, Director of Research of the Civil Liberties Association.
I want you to ask not why were these men interned. There was no good reason for interning these men, women, and children. But ask yourself why, after 80 years, the government of Canada still refuses to recognize that an injustice was done. On behalf of the Ukrainian Canadian community, on behalf of all of us here today, we'd like to present you with a medallion in commemoration of the work you've done on behalf of our community.
Boris Sidoruk, representing the Calgary office of the Ukrainian Canadian Civil Liberties Association.
The Ukrainian Canadian Civil Liberties Association has had its differences with other groups in the Ukrainian Canadian community. We all must move forward together to secure an honorable and timely Ukrainian Canadian settlement agreement with the Government of Canada. We pledge that we will work with the Ukrainian Canadian Congress to ensure there is a concerted and effective campaign to secure an acknowledgement and restitution. Whatever differences there were before will now be buried. We call upon the Government of Canada to finally address the Ukrainian Canadian community's claims, and we ask the community's support. Write to or phone your Member of Parliament within the next few days. As a taxpayer, as a voter, as a citizen of Canada, you must insist that he or she help make good on the promises of the Liberal, Conservative, Reform, New Democrat, and Bloc Québécois parties. They have all promised their support to our cause at different times. Isn't it about time they kept their promises?
I'm here with John Gregorovich, the head of the Ukrainian Civil Liberties Association. John, you mentioned that not only were there people interned in the camps here, but many others were affected by the Canadian government's policy towards Ukrainians.
Oh yes, some 5,300 Ukrainian Canadians were men, women, and children, including very young children, were interned. But 80,000 were deprived of the liberty of movement. They had to stay where they were. They had to report weekly to the police, and they couldn't travel or go anywhere without permission. Another 88,000 who had had the right to vote lost the right to vote, and that wasn't restored until 1920. So the effect on the community was much wider. Basically, the whole adult community was affected by it.
What are the next steps for the Ukrainian Civil Liberties Association in terms of trying to get the Canadian government to redress the community?
Well, there are two aspects to this. Of course, first of all, as you know, we are recreating historical memory. We have, we think a decent thing would have been for the government to be willing to toss in the $100,000 or so that is required to mark the various concentration camps. They aren't, so we're doing it from community money. The other thing that we want to do, of course, which is important for us in the long run, and this is not a federal government responsibility, it's a provincial responsibility, is to get the facts of the internment into the elementary school and high school curriculum so that all Canadians will know what is a part of the history of Canada. Politicians and bureaucrats know that out of every 10,000 people who come to them with a problem or a request, that as long as they say the right things, you know, they say, well, it's a very important question, we'll study it, we'll do something about it, don't worry, we'll take care of it, that 9,999 will go away and nothing will do. The result is that anyone who really wants to get something has to be prepared for the long haul, and that is to hang in there until finally it's easier for them to do something than to keep telling you bug off.
Well, hopefully efforts like this by the Ukrainian Canadian community will change their mind with respect to...
I think all of this helps, you know. It's a matter of keeping up the pressure on an ongoing basis until finally they decide it's easier to do something than to not do something and keep getting people phoning and writing and so on. And who knows when that will happen.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with John Gregorovich, head of the Ukrainian Civil Liberties Association.